We thank Hashem. We're able to learn every day. In the schus of our learning, we should have the base of Mikdash immediately. It should be a panacea. Okay. Today we're going to start Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. The bottom line, the last three words. Itmar starts with the word Itmar. What was happening beforehand? We're discussing if a kedushin affects the status of a bas kayin. If a kedushin to a man that would make a woman prohibited from eating truma, if the kedushin itself has that effect. So we said that was a machlaikas between Reb Meir and Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon. The example the Mishnah gave was a almana, a widow to a kohen gadol, or a divorcee to a regular kohen, where Reb Meir said that she cannot eat truma back in her father's house because of that kedushin. He called it like mishtameres labia psula. She's on the verge of having this forbidden marriage, forbidden union, and she's already puzzled from eating truma. And Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon said no, she's still kosher because she's not forbidden yet until they have relations together. She's still kosher. Itmar. Now we start the statement of Amiroim. Rav Amar yesh chuppah lepsulas. We were discussing before kedushin. What about chuppah? Good morning. Now chuppah is either a yichud room or a canopy or whatever it is. But we're dealing with, there was no kedushin. If there was kedushin, then it would take me back to the old machlaikas. So we have to skip a kedushin here. At least that's how Rashi puts it. All he did was a direct chuppah. And he didn't do biyah. He didn't have the relations. What happens now to the status of this woman that has chuppah without the biyah and without the kedushin, and it's to someone that's forbidden? Now we're on 57 B on the top, the very top. Rav says yesh chuppah lepsulas. The chuppah itself would invalidate her. What does that mean? She wouldn't be allowed to go back to her father's house and eat truma. It's already invalid. Shmuel Amar ein chuppah lepsulas. Shmuel says there's no such thing. She's not invalid yet. She didn't have biyah with someone that's forbidden. She just was secluded in a room, or maybe under a canopy. Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel says, "Maidli Abba." Rav would agree. Abba is another name for Rav. Rashi says something surprising. I thought that Rav's name was Abba, but he was called Rav because he was so great. They called him Rav, and his name was Abba. Rashi says he's called Abba because he's so great. It's like the Rosh, the head. It's called Abba, and his real name was Rav. That's what it sounds like. No, that's what Rashi says. Okay. It's one or the other, so it's whichever way it goes. So he says, Maidli Abba, Rav would agree. Rav is giving this, great strength to chuppah. He said, but that would only be if she would be eligible. She's the age of biyah, of having relations. Let's say there was chuppah for a girl that was under 3 years old, where she's too young to have relations. So then, if there's no biyah, there's no chuppah either. Rav would agree to that. Even though Rav is saying chuppah really has the same effect, but that's only because there's potential. If there's no potential for relations, then there's no chuppah. Amar Rav Afanan Namitanina. Rav says that, well, I actually have this in a Mishnah also. Once a girl is 3 years old, then her kedushin could already take effect if it's done with relations, because she's old enough to have relations. Yavam, and if she's 3 years old and the Yavam lives with her Kana, he acquires her as a wife. That's the brother of the deceased. Kana. And at that point, someone would be prohibited to live with her because she's already a married woman.
She's 3 years old.
She's 3 years old.
And her husband died. So no, it's Yibum.
Yibum. Yeah.
Married her very young.
Yeah. So
you can't marry a 3-year-old.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
It's not.
They're more mature back then. Rivka was 3. She was already serving guests.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean.
Yeah, look.
The boy there's no bia there.
The boy can hardly serve the guests when he's 20, but the girl can already serve tea and everything when she's 3 years old. It's already a hostess. So
her husband's gonna.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Chuppah, according to Rav, would work if she's old enough for bia. And now we have a Mishnah that says that bia starts relations is from the age 3. We're not done yet. If she would be a nida at that age, it's not probable, but or maybe yes, even one drop of blood. It could be even one drop of blood would make her a nida, but her cycle is not going to come till later. Let's assume. So I don't know if that works. If it's earlier or later, I don't know if that means healthier or not healthy. I'm not sure. I don't. Okay, whatever the case is, if she would be a nida, the man that would live with her would become tamei to the extent that he would make the bed under him tamei enough to be able to contaminate food, which is similar to the el yainai shel zav, to the upper sheet of the zav, which also could contaminate food. In other words, the person that lives with her does not have the same tumma that she would have. She has a tumma that the sheet under her, the bed under her, can contaminate a person. The person that lives with her, the bed under him, if he goes and lays on another bed, he becomes tamei, lays on another bed under him, will only make food tamei. Okay, but she's already contaminating the person that lives with her, even though she's only 3 years old, but she's a nida. Nisis l'kayin. Let's see, she gets married to a kayin. Well, echelas b'truma. She can eat truma. Why? She's married. She's part of the kayin's family. It's a real marriage. Let's say someone that would invalidate her lives with her. Pasla, she becomes pasal. Okay, now look at what it says. It's only from 3 years old that she would become pasal because of her relations with someone that would invalidate her. Mifsala b'chuppah. And at that age, she would become pasal with chuppah as well, according to Rav. But less than 3 years old, where relations with someone that would invalidate her would not disqualify her. So chuppah also won't invalidate her. Yeah. So Rav is taking this from a Mishnah, and he's saying that this would support Shmuel's statement about Rav, that Rav would agree with less than 3 years old. That even though there's a chuppah, but it's chuppah that doesn't have potential. She's not eligible yet for relations. Amar Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama says, Yesh chuppah lepsula yispanu lemachlekes Reb Meir v'Rab Elazar v'Rab Shimon. It's actually a machlekes. Tanoim. You're telling me it's a machlekes between Rav and Shmuel. That actually goes back earlier. Reb Meir, Rami Bar Chama says, according to Reb Meir, what did Reb Meir say? He said that kedushin, betrothal for a forbidden union, would already invalidate her. so too chuppah would also invalidate. L'Rab Meir Damar Kedushi Pasli, Chuppanami Pasla. If Kedushin, which is betrothal, invalidates her, so too the chuppah, which is taking her under the canopy, also would invalidate her. Chuppah alone. L'Rab Elazar v'Rab Shimon, according to those other two views, Damar Kedushin Lei Pasli, so Chuppanami Lei Pasla. It's logical. It's a logical comparison. Yeah. It's interesting that Rav and Shmuel were arguing about this, and they were ignoring the views of Reb Meir and Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon about how Kedushin work. They were saying according to both. Right? That's what it sounded like. It sounded like Rav was saying, according to everyone, chuppah is going to be invalidate her. And Shmuel was saying, according to everyone, chuppah is not going to invalidate her. I had a machlekes by Kedushin, which seems to be exactly the same issue. Where there's a machlekes Reb Meir and Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon. They were ignoring that. Comes along Rambam Bar Chama said, you can't ignore that. This is exactly the machlekes. The Gemara says, Umimai, how do you know that it's exactly the same? Dilmad kan like Reb Meir hasam el b'kedushin, the kanila. Maybe Reb Meir says that Kedushin would invalidate this woman. In other words, Kedushin with someone that was forbidden to her. Why? Well, let's say she's a divorcee. She's 3 years old or older or whatever. It doesn't matter. We don't have to deal with the 3-year-old case. A woman that was divorced, and now she's marrying a kohen. The kohen skips the Kedushin part. So I don't have a ring, but I do have a canopy. So they go straight to the canopy. And so Reb Meir would say that if he would have used the ring, she would already become invalid and she wouldn't be able to eat kedusha, to eat truma, even from her father's house. Why? She's just married a kohen and she's a divorcee. She becomes a halala.
Right.
So she can't go back and eat truma. That's because kedushin actually works. A ring would have actually been an acquisition. However, a chuppah, the like kanala, it's not one of the 3 ways. You have, how does a woman get married? A kedushin with kesef shtar ubiyah, ring, document, or relations. She didn't do any of them. She just has the canopy. So maybe that doesn't work according to Reb Meir. You're telling me that you're going to match up Rav's view with Reb Meir's view and Shmuel's view with Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon that regarding chuppah and put it directly into their views of Kedushin. Maybe Kedushin works and chuppah doesn't work. So Reb Meir would agree that she doesn't become invalid and it would fit perfectly with Shmuel.
So it's not a marriage.
It's not a marriage, right? Chuppah like kanalai, inami, or you can do this the other way. Ad kan like Amir Reb Elazar Reb Shimon hasamela b'kedushin like krevel l'biyah, but chuppah the krevel l'biyah chanami the pasta. Maybe Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon said that kedushin doesn't invalidate her, doesn't turn her into halala, and she's. We don't consider her mishtameres l'biyah psula, that she's awaiting a forbidden relations just because she had kedushin. We don't like invalidate her because kedushin is not directly related to relations, but chuppah, which is taking her into the canopy or into some room, a yichud room, that is very related to relations. That's the next step, would be relations. So maybe chuppah is worse. And Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon that said kedushin doesn't do anything to her, maybe chuppah would do something to her, would invalidate her. Okay. Yeah. 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 If you want to say that your discussion here is a machlekes tanaim, then you have to choose another group of tanaim. You can't just match it so simply into the machlekes by kedushin. You're gonna have to do it a little bit more complicated. The Tanya, it's taught in a brisa. Nisu zu v'zu. A kayan that gets married to this one and to that one. Now, who's the this one and to that one? Ksheris psulas. People that he's permissible to marry and people that he's not permissible to marry. Okay. or they entered into the chuppah, but he didn't have relations with them. What is the status? We didn't say what Nissa was. How did he do Nissa? Let's assume Nisu means relations, right? The full marriage. And then the second case is they have the canopy, the chuppah, but they don't have the relations. What's the rule? Well, oichlis mishaloi v'oichlis b'tshuma. They're already considered married. They're eating truma. Eating truma. Wow. If they're psulas, how are they eating truma? It says nichnesu. It says nichnesu l'chuppah michlal denisu. That probably means that they're married. Nisu mamish. You want to say that they're fully married, that he had relations with them? Elalav. You can't say that. He didn't have relations with them. It was just a plain canopy. What comes out from this? And we see that they can still eat. Why? Because a canopy right, the yichud room.
They're eating from it before they go.
Right. Yeah. So what we're saying is that the nisu cannot be a real nisu. Nisu can only be. It gets the Mishnah is elaborating that what does the nisu mean? That it was just a chuppah. What are we saying that they can eat truma? Well, they're eating from the husband. They're considered married to the husband. How can they eat truma? They're not in his. Well, they are in his house. They should be able to eat truma. What it means is eichus b'truma is that they don't become. Yeah, it's interesting because now we're going back.
But he doesn't have one of the three main components of
Kedusha.
Kesef Star of Bia.
Right.
So
yeah, maybe that's exactly what it means. That
it's a quasi state.
Yeah, but maybe that's exactly what it means. Because when it says Eicheles B'Truma,
the year before is
the Kedushin.
After goes the
Yeah, I think we want to skip the Kedushin though in order for this to work. Because if we have a Kedushin, then we're going to have problems with we're going to back to the Machlekes Rav between Reb Meir and Reb Elazar. Let's say if we skip the Kedushin, they did this without a Kedushin. So my only question is, are we dealing with her eat truma from the husband's family, or are we dealing with her eating truma from her father's family? So let's say we're dealing with their father's family, then it would make sense. We're dealing with that she is a bas kayan, okay? She's also psula for a kayan. She can't marry a kayan, but she's not a halala. So she was married once, and now she is divorced. Now she's back in her father's house because she didn't have children. So she's back at her father's house and she's eating truma. Well, she's a divorcee. She goes into a chuppah with a kohen, and she's about to become a halala. So what we're saying is she can still eat truma according to the first opinion, because she's not fully married. What are we seeing? That chuppah is nothing. She's not psula yet.
But isn't it specific that she's eating from her husband?
Yeah, she's
not
eating from her
father's.
husband. Yeah, what does that mean?
And the
And the chelas b'truma. Yeah, if she would be,
it's not her father's.
Right. We can say it's her. Yeah, very good. We can say she's eating her husband's truma as well. But how could she eat her husband's truma? Oh, we're going to follow that opinion that holds that chuppah is enough to eat from his family, we have to follow that opinion. However, she doesn't become pasul.
She's eating her husband's truma even though his marriage is pasul.
Yeah. What we mean to say is that the chuppah ain't chuppah lepsules. It was Shmuel's view that the chuppah doesn't invalidate her. It's only enough that she should be eating his truma and eating his food, but we don't say that it passes her. Very interesting. Even though he's a Kohen and she's a divorcee, she's not pasul yet.
But it's not supposed to do it, but if it's not typhus, the marriage.
Yeah, well, it's typhus enough. Oh, you want to know if such a marriage works? That's a machlekes Rabbi Akiva and the others. If yesh kedushin b'chai v'lavin, if it's typhus or not. We say yes, I think.
Yes, then we understand how she's eating from his
Right.
Not supposed to.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's a good point. Rabbi Shmuel ben Eishel, Rabbi Yechim ben Braka, he argues. He says, Kol shebiyasa ma'achilasa. If relations would allow her to eat, so chupasa ma'achilasa, then the chuppah would work. However, kol shein biyasa ma'achilasa, ain't chupasa ma'achilasa. Okay, now we have a machlekes. The Rabbi Yishmael is going to say that chuppah invalidates her, just like relations would invalidate her. He would follow Rav, that yesh chuppah lepsules, she becomes invalid just from chuppah. And the first opinion, which is the Tanna Kama, would follow Shmuel, or Shmuel follows the Tanna Kama, that ain't chuppah lepsules, she's not invalid yet. Gemara says, Mimai, how do you know that this is the case? Dilma Rabbi Yishmael ben Eishel Rabbi Yochanan ben Breka Karab Meir Sphere Leidam Kedushin La Yachla. Maybe there was Kedushin here, and the reason why Rabbi Yishmael says that she can't eat was because she was already invalid from the Kedushin. It doesn't fit with the Brisa. Brisa said that the issue was chuppah, not Kedushin. You're telling me that there's another side problem here that we didn't know, no one brought up. It says, 1 second. Hi, kol shein biyasa machilas ein chupasa machilas, kol shein biyasa machilas ein kaspa machilas mibayle. If you want to tell me that the kedushin was the issue, then why are you telling me the chuppah? You should have told me that if the bia would invalidate her, the relations would invalidate her, so the wedding money would also, the kedushin money, betrothal money, would also invalidate her. Why do you mention the chuppah? The Gemara says, well, maybe he was talking about chuppah because he wanted to make it parallel to what the Tanna Kama were referring to. The Tanna Kama were referring to that the chuppah does not invalidate her. So he said, yes, it's a problem. What the chuppah does. But really he meant that she was already invalid from the kedushin, which took place before. What comes out from this? That it could be that the chuppah itself, even according to Rabbi Shmuel ben Eishel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Breka, would be no problem. It's only the kedushin that was the problem. That would be Reb Meir's opinion. So now you want to superimpose an early machlekes Tanoim on the machlekes of Rav and Shmuel. Not necessarily do you have it matching up perfectly. It's very possible that both of them would say that there is no chuppah. Both of them would agree with Shmuel. Chuppah doesn't invalidate him. Rabbi Shmuel ben Eishel Rabbi Yochanan says that that's because there was a betrothal beforehand that invalidated. Okay. Amar Rav Amram. Rav Amram says, Hom mil samal and Rav Sheshis. This matter, Rav Sheshis already told us about. And he lightened up our eyes from a Mishnah. Yesh chuppah lepsules. He said that there is a chuppah to invalidate these women, which was the opinion of Rav. Rav Sheshis is like a student of Rav. And V'tanatuna, and we have a Mishnah that supports it. what does the Mishnah say? It says that by a saita, she responds, Amen. Actually, Amen, Amen. It says twice. They give her an oath. They administer an oath that she didn't live with another man. Now, when she responds, Amen, included in that response is that she was only warned for one person that the husband had suspected. Don't be secluded with so-and-so, Now, when she responds Amen, that's a response that not only with so-and-so wasn't I secluded, but I didn't have relations with anyone else either. So there's included in that other people as well. Now, what it says is that besides for that there was no other man that she was with, it says, Amen shaleshatisi arusa v'nesua shemeres yebim l'knusa. Included in that oath is that she didn't stray, be secluded or have relations while she was betrothed, after she was married, while she was waiting for the Yavam, and after she was married to the Yavam. So in other words, we throw this whole thing in as a whole package, that once she's getting this oath, she gets a package that she didn't do anything else wrong either.
I am not, I never was.
Right, I am not, I never was. Right. During any of those periods. Now, it's interesting. The interesting one here is that the Shimeres Yabam, she's not really married. She's a widow. But there's a Zika. And she's not allowed to marry anyone from the market. That's the expression. She's a Surah Lashuk. She's forbidden to the market. So that would also, that prohibition also comes in over here where she has to take that oath.
An unmarried woman is in the market.
It's interesting that he could warn her. Can you imagine? He's not even married to her yet. He can already warn her. Don't be secluded with so-and-so. Yeah. That's why the brother had a heart attack. No, I'm kidding. Turn this into a novel.
Does the amendment apply only to a period of her relationship with this fellow who accused her?
That has to be.
Huh?
It has to be like that. Yeah. Yeah. Now, if it was a totally different marriage, that oath is not going to, right? It's only with, yeah, it's only this marriage, but everything that's in this package of marriage. Okay. So we didn't get to the point yet. We're just bringing in a new subject, and then we have to discuss, like, what does this have to do with chuppah? So the Gemara says, what's your case when you say she's betrothed? Kani over here doesn't mean acquired. Kani means warned. We're now in Masechta Saita for a few minutes. Okay? If you say that he warned her when she was betrothed to him, the Bach adds in the word, and she was secluded during that time. And he brings her already, this is a bad start. And he brings her to the Beis Hamikdash. She's in Arusa, they're only betrothed, they're like engaged, and they're already going for counseling. No, this is, they're going to drink the water. So, Arusa bas mishtiyahi, and Arusas already can drink the water. But Tanan, Arusa v'shemeres yom le'sheisel netos ksuba. There's no, if she already messes up at that point, so it's over, and she just loses her ksuba. So there's no drinking. The drinking would be that she wants to prove that she's innocent, she's going to get her ksuba. But if she violates it back then, so she loses the ksuba from the betrothal. And by a shemeres yavim as well. So she's not drinking the sota water when she's only betrothed. So the Gemara says, okay, well, apparently he overlooked that she was secluded with a man during the betrothal period. He marries her. And then he takes her to the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara says, "Mibadki lamaya." You think the water is going to check her at that point? Why? What's the problem? V'hatanya, but we have a brayso. The man has to also be clean in order for the water to work. Now, what we're referring to here is not if the man had other relations with other women that he wasn't married to. That's not what we're referring to. Referring to if he had relations with her. He had warned her. She's secluded. If he refrains from relations with her, then they go to the Beis Hamikdash. They give her the water to drink. The water will check her to see if she's clean. But if he had relations with her when he wasn't supposed to, after she was already secluded, they're supposed to be separate from that point. She's forbidden to him. She could be a sota. She can't be with her husband. She committed adultery. So if he's clean, the Saita would check her. Now you have to realize what just happened. He warned her when they were betrothed. He can't take her to drink yet, so he marries her. Now he's taking her to drink. How did he marry her? He had relations with her. He had relations with her. The Saita water doesn't work. He married her through Bia. We're assuming that Nesuim means. Then it's not going to work. Right. Okay, so we were setting this up because we think we're going to be able to come up with a way of claiming that this is the case exactly that we're looking for. Ella the kanilak shiarusa, rather he warned her when she was betrothed, vistatra, and she's secluded. That's the case we were looking for. They had chuppah. That's how we married her, but there was no relations. Shmamina, you know what we see from this? Now that he can bring her to drink, so yesh chuppah lepsulis, that chuppah apparently works.
Oh, so a chuppah is one of the three?
Well, that's what we're coming out with. That chuppah is going to. How do you see yesh chuppah lepsulis from this? If you can make her drink, we're saying that she even though she's forbidden to have relations with him, that's what we're saying. She's forbidden to have relations with him. Why? Because she was a saita. But nevertheless, we're considering her tachasishe, under her husband. How is that? Well, that's because of the chuppah. We're seeing that chuppah with relations that's forbidden is still working. Okay. Shmamina yesh chuppah lepsulis. Who holds this? This is the opinion of Rav. This was what Rav Shesha said, that yesh chuppah lepsulis, and we have a Mishnah that supports it. Amar Rava. Comes along Rava and says, do you think you've just fixed the Mishnah and you've resolved all the issues? You're still in a mess. When Rabacha Bar Chanina came from the south, he came, he brought a brisa. Besides for the husband. That means she had relations with someone else. The only way that the Saita waters work is if the husband had relations with her first. They were married. They lived like together, husband and wife. And then she goes and she has relations outside the marriage. Adultery. But here in this case, she had relations with the adulterer before she was married, before she had relations with her. Doesn't work. So what are you telling me that you've resolved all the issues by saying that it's chuppah without bia? if that's the case, if there was never relations, the site of water doesn't work anyway. Amir Rami Bar Chama, so Rami Bar Chama resolves this Rava's question. They were students together, Rami Bar Chama and Rava. Says, no, he had relations with her, not for marriage, just because when they were betrothed, he lived with her. It wasn't a real, it wasn't a marriage. It was just in her father's house, in his father-in-law's house. They happened to have lived together.
Doesn't that make the marriage if it wasn't?
It doesn't make it a marriage unless it's l'shem marriage. This was l'shem znus. Okay. The only problem is if that's the way you're going to resolve this Mishnah, now we have to go back and look at the Mishnah and see what it actually said. So no chuppah yet, right? If this is the case, how is Rami Bar Chama going to explain if she's still in Arusa? How is she drinking? I'm not sure. She's still in Arusa. We're missing a point over here. How is she drinking if she's still in Arusa? I guess that maybe the Gemara could ask that question as well, but the Gemara has another question. The Gemara says, okay, so if you look back at the Mishnah, it said that when she says Amen, she's taking the vow, she's taking this oath that she's clean from when she was in Arusa. She's clean when she was in Asua. She's clean when she was a Shemeres Yavam, and she's clean when she was after she was married to the brother, after Yevamos was performed. Now, in order for this to work, she had to have relations, l'shem znus, while she was betrothed, Arusa. So what does that mean? In order for this to work, she had to have relations with the Yavam as well. So the Kavasei Gabi Shemeres Yavam Shabala Yavam Beis Chamea, the Ruvain passed away. He's married to Leah. Now, Leah is waiting for the Yibam to be performed by Shimon, Reuven's brother. Now, Shimon warns her, don't be secluded with so-and-so. Now, she's being taken to the Beis HaMikdash to drink the sota water, and we have a problem because Shimon never had relations with her. The only time she could warn her is if his relations were first, and she's a Shemeres Yavam. She's still waiting. So what are you going to tell me? That he had relations with her while he was waiting to marry her? If that's the case, Shemeres Yavam, Karisla, you can still call her waiting for Yibam. Remember before we had a whole Mishnah that says that even if it was rape, even if he thought it was a different woman, even if it was l'shem znus, whatever it is, he's married to her.
Even if she fell off a roof.
Even if she fell off a roof, right? Was that case? He fell off the roof.
Right,
Yeah.
So he stepped so completely into his brother's shoes that this goes back to her Arusa to his brother
No. Yeah.
12 years ago.
Yeah. You're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead. We're not taking it back to the original Reuven's marriage. We're still thinking that Shimon has his own marriage here. And how is he bringing her to drink after warning her? It must be that he had relations with her while she was a Shemeres Yavam. The problem is that doesn't work. Now, I have a way of resolving it the way you're saying, which the Gemara was going to mention, that it doesn't have to be his relations, it could be the brothers. Yeah, but we're not holding there yet. So, Hamarav, Kanalakal, we had a discussion that if there's a bias shogeg, if he lives with her and he thinks it's someone else, all of those relations that were not l'shem marriage. So what type of acquisition was that for his wife? Did he acquire her entirely, or was it only acquired her in relevance to the matters of Yibam. So Rav said was kana lakol. Okay. Shmuel said, what was kana lakol? To the exclusion of truma. What was this? Kana lakol. Rav said, kind of like that she can even eat truma entirely. Shmuel said no, she can't eat truma. So the problem here is that if it's ishtei ma'alya to the extent that she could eat truma, then what are you telling me that she's a shemeres yavam? She's not a shemeres yavam. If we say, according to Shmuel, that she's a shemeres yavam still, according to Shmuel, then fine. So that's what the Gemara answers. The Gemara says, "Kishmuel dar malay kan al dvar mamor b'parsha." She's acquired through the relations that he had, the shem znus, but not 100%, and that's why she's still called a shemeres yavam. The Gemara says, one second, midihu time el l'rav hamarav kan al akol. Your whole discussion here was just to tell me that yesh chuppah lepsulas, that chuppah is going to work. You came up with a case to tell me that there was even relations before, and still now there's only chuppah. Yeah, so that's what we're saying, that there's a chuppah, even though there were relations before, but the relations before doesn't have an effect on her. She's got to be puzzled from the relations. It's not the chuppah if there were relations. Yeah, that's the problem. So what are you telling me now that you're following Shmuel? If the whole point of this was to tell me that there's a chuppah, that's only according to Rav. And according to Rav, it doesn't fit, because according to Rav, this would only work if there's relations. And once there's relations, they're already husband and wife. So the Gemara says, "Hachem mayaskinan going to avad b'maimer." We're changing the story. All of this is Rava telling me that you think you fixed up a brisa, you think you fixed up a mishnah to prove yesh chuppah lepsulos. This mishnah is very problematic. You did not resolve it. So now the Gemara says, well, what we're dealing with is that Shimon performed mimer. Okay, what's mimer? Mimer is a type of betrothal on Leah. And the Beishama Yidamar mimer kind of kinyan gomer. Yeah, we're looking for a very interesting way of resolving how he could have relations with her. We're talking about a shemeres yavam, has relations with the yavam, the brother Shimon has relations with Leah, which is the yavama, and he still doesn't acquire. How does this work? The way it works is if we follow Beishamai, Beishamai says that Maimer is a kinyan gomer. That means when he gave her money, and as a kedushin, the whole story of Yibam drops off, and now they become like regular man and woman that have to have an actual marriage. In other words, the zika drops from the mimer. There's no more of the zika. So now when he has relations with her, then it makes a big difference if the intention by the relation was for Yibam or if it was l'shem snus. So that's what we're resolving here by saying that it's according to Beishamai that says that after mimer, then it's just a regular man and woman. Damer mimer kind of kinyan gomer, and then the zika goes off. And now what are we left with? Just a relations of znus. The Gemara says, one second. That's what you're doing here. you're telling me that she's not a Shimeres Yavam anymore. She's just a regular Arusa. Ihachi Haino Arusa. Now it's repetitive in the Mishnah. It says she was Amein when she was Arusa. She's taking the vow. She's Amein when she was in a Nesua. She's Amein from Shimeres Yavam. She's Amein when she's a Knusa. She's agreeing that she was clean all of those times. But 1 second, if Shimeres Yavam is only possible according to Beis Shammai when she's really just an Arusa now, so you just repeated the same thing twice. The Gemara says, but Nesua and Knusa is also the same thing. Nesua is when she's regular married, and Knusa is when she's married to the Yavam. So, Ela Nesua Didei Knusa de Chavri, Achanam Arusa de Shimeres Yavam de Chavri. It's two examples of Arusa, you're right. No problem. Okay. What are we holding now? How does this conclude? We're saying that we're following Beis Shammai's view that there was mimer, and therefore that's why she's able to drink. Because they had relations already, but the relations don't count for marriage. Relations just keep her still as an Arusa. And is it a case of chuppah? As an Arusa, she can't drink. They had to have chuppah afterwards. So they're having chuppah, they had a chuppah. Yeah, I think we're going to go back and we have it resolved. That what we're saying is that they had relations l'shem znus by the Shimeres Yavam. Why? Because there was mimer. In relations, the same znus would work according to Beis Shammai, and it doesn't make them married. And then there was a chuppah.
Once you have mimer,
you don't need chuppah. But what we're saying is that the chuppah is going to make them enough married that he can then bring her to drink.
But mine doesn't.
And mimer doesn't. Mimer is just an erison, and erison doesn't bring her to drink.
Wait. The difference in the cases is one is his wife and the other is the one.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's two different cases.
Right. The problematic one was how to get by when it's his wife, we resolved it by saying that he had znus in the father's house, in the father-in-law's house, with his own betrothed wife. In that way, and then that way there was relations before the adulterous relations. That's what we had to get in there. We had to get that right. Okay. Rav Papa Amar Haitanu Detanya. It's following another opinion. Ein makanan la arusa lashkaisa kishi arusa. You don't warn an arusa to have her drink when she's an arusa. Aval makana isa lashkaisa kishi nesua. But you can warn her then to have her drink after the marriage. So we're not dealing with arusa anymore. Okay. The only question is, when was she secluded? There's two pshatim in Rashi here. Was she secluded when she's arusa and she drinks later, or was she secluded after and the warning was just before? Okay. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar al Yedei Gilgal. Rav Nachman Yitzchak has another teretz. He says like this. He says the whole thing is not necessary. You're making everything so complicated. The whole thing is just very simple. He warned her after the marriage, and he's bringing her to drink. Once we're making her take an oath, you know what we do? We throw in all other Gilgal Shua, all other oaths, a bunch of things. Not that he warned her before and she was secluded before. We'll just cover everything once we're doing this. So it's Al Yedei Gilgal. Okay. Shalach Rav Chan. I'm not going to be able to finish this. Okay, let's leave it by Shalach. Okay. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you very much.